People are always talking about their happily ever afters. Their dreams, stories, wishes, all the above. Like, for instance, the plumber with the 12 children who wins the Irish lottery. From toilets to riches. You know, that story. Or the nurse in Denmark, of all places, who falls in love with royalty. From diapers to Dior. You know, that story. The lowly milkman, who serves the wealthy, decides to go into real estate and makes a pile of money. From cheap bottled milk to martinis at lunch. You know, that story. Or even the maid of some rich guy who's on her daily bus routine when the bus crashes and collects a lot of money from the insurance. From mops to mansion. You know, that story. Perhaps the most famous of these kinds of stories is Cinderella. Maybe you heard of it. If you haven't, here's how it goes. Our story begins with the death of Cinderella's mother. Sad but true. Her last words were, "Be good, be devout. Then I will smile down from heaven in the seam of a cloud." Pretty strange last words if you ask me. Cinderella wasn't particularly overjoyed that her mom died. However, she took her mother's words to heart and was a good girl for the rest of her life. And as promised, her mother watched her from a cloud.
No matter how your heart is grieving,
Cinderella's father took another wife, who had 2 daughters. Pretty enough, but they had hearts like blackjacks. Cinderella's father brought presents home from town. Fancy dresses and jewels for the 2 stepsisters, but only the twig of a small tree for Cinderella.
I hear you. Come on, get up, you say. Time to start another day. Even he orders me around. Well, there's one thing.
Cinderella planted that twig near her mother's grave. It grew into a big tree, and a white dove took nest near one of the top branches. The cool part about this dove is that it gave any present you wished for. Anything that Cinderella needed at the time, it would give. Next came the ball, as you all know. It was a marriage market. The prince was looking for a wife. All but Cinderella were preparing and gussying up for the event. For whatever reason, Cinderella had to go to this ball. She begged and begged her stepmother to go, but she would not let her. By the end, she caved in and said, "If you clean up all the cinders in the house, we'll let you go." At first, this cleanup thing might seem pretty lame to you, but Cinderella, unlike most people, have the animal hookups. Any chipmunk or bunny in the area dashed her position and cleaned up for her.
The dream that you wish will.
After Cinderella had completed the job, she went up to her stepmother and asked her again, who said, "You have no clothes to wear to the ball, and you can't dance." You know, that's the way with fairy tale stepmothers. So Cinderella was pretty sad, so she went to go complain to her mother's grave. Luckily, while she was complaining, the dove was listening in the tree, where it was before, and gave Cinderella a dress and dancing abilities. Within 10 seconds of Cinderella's arrival, she began dancing with the prince. The prince was so in love with Cinderella that he didn't dance with anyone the entire night except her, and the other guests were sad. As nightfall approached, Cinderella thought it'd be best to get back home. The prince walked her there, and as soon as they got home, Cinderella dashed into the pigeon house. The prince was like, "What the heck, man? You just abandoned me." So the prince took an axe to the pigeon house and broke it open, but Cinderella was long gone. These events repeated themselves for 3 days, until the prince thought it would be a good idea to coat the palace steps in cobbler's wax, so that when Cinderella ran home the following night, her shoe would be trapped there, and he would have the shoe size and shape for his lover. So the prince grabbed the shoe and thought to himself, who could this amazing, beautiful woman be who keeps coming to my dance parties every night? The prince's solution was to give the shoe to every woman in the kingdom and let them try it on and see if he can find the fit, which is his lover. It's too much to do. So the first house that the prince went to happened to be Cinderella's, by complete chance. He gave the shoe for stepsister number 1 to try on. And well, looks like stepsister number 1 was a couple shoe sizes too big. Her big toe got in the way of the shoe. So her solution was to cut it completely off with a rusty knife. It's a bit overboard, but I agree, I would definitely do that too, in the kind of situation. As strange as it may seem, it definitely fooled the prince. The stepsister number 1 and the prince made off into the sunset on a horse. I think it's a horse. However, Cinderella's dove friend was actually passing by that way and was like, "Hey prince, check out the blood on her shoe. Go check that out. It's not her." The prince was like, "No one fools me," and he brought the stepsister home so he could try it on the other stepsister. So the prince went back to the house and repeated the same routine, but instead presented it to stepsister number 2, who obviously is the princess. As eligible as she may seem, again, her shoe size was too big, and she cut off her entire heel with, again, a rusty blade. Nice one. So stepsister 2 made off with the prince into the sunset on yet another oddly shaped horse. But lucky for us, again, the dove was passing by, and he's like, "There's more blood on the shoe, prince. Are you even looking?" So then the prince went back and said, "This better fit. We're running out of women to try this shoe on." And this time he gave it to Cinderella, the housemaid. Cinderella, being the only one in the family with a normal foot, fit right into the shoe, didn't have to cut anything off, and fit like a charm. So then Cinderella and the prince made off on yet another anatomically incorrect horse. And the dove, who was there for the other two, was there for Cinderella and said, "You know what? Yes, this is her. Good job, prince." Cinderella and the prince got married the following day, but due to budget cuts, we cannot show the wedding. And as for the two stepsisters, they got their comeuppance. In true Oedipus the King style, they got their eyes gouged out by none other than that dove guy. It's not always rainbows and butterflies, it's compromise, it moves. Cinderella and the prince lived happily ever after, like 2 dolls in a museum case. That story.